Kurusu was an ugly, miserable loner who desperately wanted to lose his V card, but didn't know how. However, after he joins an exchange program to help monster baddies find a home, they all become obsessed and teach him how to become the ultimate RIZZ master. It starts with Kurusu waking up and seeing Mia sleeping in his bed. Upon realizing that she wrapped him up, he tells her to get off, but she reminds him that snake baddies need to feel warm. He then tries to prepare a bath for her, but she drags him back into bed and hugs him bags to feel warm. After she falls back asleep, he tries to get free, but her grip gets even tighter and almost suffocates him until he grabs her tail. As he speeds up the massage, she gets weak and he finally breaks free, but she pulls him back for one last squeeze before leaving the bed and seeing that he has already kicked the bucket. Minutes later, he finishes getting the bath set up and wonders how Mia goes number 2 before she comes in without a plot cover, which causes his brain to implode. After hopping into the bath, she talks about how she has always wanted to visit a hot spring and asks if he will go with her. As she tries to make matters worse by showing off her abs, he turns to leave, but she pulls him in to share the bath instead of visiting a hot spring. When she starts poking his back, he turns the water cold to distract her and escapes before giving himself multiple concussions to induce amnesia. Afterward, he puts on the History Channel and listens to another explanation of the interspecies exchange law permitting demi-humans to peacefully coexist with humans while making breakfast. As he sets down the food and turns to get the rest, a chick named Sumizu nearly gives him a heart attack before reminding him that she is the exchange coordinator in charge of Mia. After pulling himself together, he asks what she wants, so she reminds him of the rule against harming any demi-human and says she wanted to make sure he wasn't using her for illegal experiments. When he points out the fact that it was her laziness with the exchange program that led to Mia staying with him in the first place, she claims it's unimportant as long as Mia is happy staying with him. He then assures her that he would never do anything to harm Mia, but Sumizu suddenly pulls closer to tell him that making plot is also considered illegal. He immediately tries to deny even thinking of such, but she tells him to stop acting like he doesn't want it, and explains that doing it will land him in jail while she will likely get deported back to her homeland. Once again, he denies ever thinking of her perfect jugs, so Sumizu decides to test how easy he is by offering her plot instead. Just then, Mia pulls him away by the neck and warns Sumizu to stay away, so she promises that it was only a joke and tells Kurusu to keep his magnum to himself before leaving. After hugging him again, Mia reminds him of the day she moved in and explains how bad she felt because she thought he would treat her like all the other regular humans who hate being around her kind. To reward him for being so kind on that day, she pins him to the ground and says she doesn't care about the rules before reaching for his wand to create cultured magic. As she reaches in, he tells her to stop, so she asks if obeying the rules is that important to him, but he tells her to reduce her grip and ends up with a broken arm. Sumizu then comes back to fix it while Maya cries in the corner and begs for his forgiveness. The next day, Sumizu tells Kurusu to take Mia out for a date so she can learn a little more about Japanese culture, and when he asks why she is making him do her job, she completely ignores the question and warns him about using his baby maker again. Later on, Mia expresses how excited she is to try out all the stuff she read about the city, but after hours of trying different activities, she gets a little disappointed because everything is still specifically designed for humans. After coming across a plot cover store for all species, she drags him inside and gives him a peek at her jugs so she can help her choose which cup fits best. He then tries to leave, but she forces him into the dressing room and drops everything before asking for his opinion again. On the way out of the store minutes later, she asks why he is always acting like he doesn't want plot, but then a human couple sees them and starts clowning him for taking her out on a date. She immediately tries to attack them, but he jumps in to take the hit before reminding her of the law against demi-humans attacking regular people. As they suddenly get surrounded by people who start taking pictures of her, she asks if they can go somewhere private and ends up taking him to a hotel room. After getting changed, she joins him on the bed and asks if he is only being nice to her because of the law. Without even giving him a chance to respond, she opens up her heart to him to show him how harmless she can be before the door gets blown apart by the interspecies SWAT unit. They almost blow his head off, but Sumizu recognizes him and explains that they are already trending on Twitter. On the way out, they see the same couple from before, and this time, their insults get even worse, so Kurusu charges up his fist and books the guy an appointment with the dentist. Back at home a few hours later, Sumizu gets his hand wrapped up and says they had to fix a settlement with the couple to avoid getting charges pressed against him. After she leaves, Mia asks why he went that far, and he says that no one should treat a girl like that even if she looks like Medusa's reincarnation. She then responds by trying to reward him, but Sumizu interrupts to ask if he made anything for dinner. When they both try to chase her away, she starts complaining about the money they had to spend on the couple he assaulted, so he immediately fixes up a plate to serve her. The next day, he notices Mia's unusually cheerful mood and asks if she shed another layer, but she reminds him of the stunt he pulled to protect her honor and promises to be the one saving him if he even gets into trouble. Just then, he gets kidnapped by a half-bird chick and wakes up in a tree branch minutes later. After Papy introduces herself, he asks why she is not with her host family, but she spots an ice cream truck and drops in to grab a cone. Just then, her bird brain experiences amnesia, and she asks why he is following her around, so he gets her the ice cream and finds a bench to understand her situation. When she explains that she is still training for the exchange program and usually escapes to spread her wings, he tells her to stop so they won't send her back to wherever she came from. Upon hearing that, she unintentionally drops her ice cream and starts bawling her eyes out, so he asks if she wouldn't mind sharing his popsicle. She then starts enjoying it a little too much, and he realizes that her choice of position is making people think he is getting the throat special, so he pulls away, leaving her covered in ice cream. He then gives her directions to the nearest bath to get cleaned, but Little Miss Turd for brains decides to hop into the water fountain instead. Before he can even ask why, she pulls him into the water so they can play around together, but Mia finally catches up to his scent and threatens to turn Papy's wings into the latest item on the McDonald's menu. After Papy tells her to do her worst, she tries to strangle her plot, but Papy frees a claw and rips out her melons, while Kurusu almost loses an eye. As he tries to warn them about the crowd of spectators, they realize that everyone is paying more attention to the girl stuck in the tree. Kurusu then uses that opportunity to put some clothes on them before Papy offers to kick the girl out of the tree. After face-planting into hard concrete, she remembers that her wings are still soaked, so Mia crawls up the tree to impress Kurusu by saving the girl, but ends up scaring her off the branch. Thankfully, Papy catches her and Kurusu breaks their fall before the local cop finally shows up. He immediately thanks Papy for the help, but when he asks for her host family, she gets confused, so Kurusu whispers that she will get deported if he discovers that she is roaming about without one. Kurusu then claims to be her host family to save her from trouble, but then the cop asks for her ID to prove it. As they almost get arrested, Sumisu shows up with the ID and heads back home with them before explaining that she was planning to bring Papy over because no one else wanted to keep a demi-human that has the same IQ points as Patrick Star. After she tells Papy not to run away from home again, she grabs Kurusu and admits that she likes him a lot more than the others before dragging him away. He first looks at Mia to make sure she is okay with it, and after she claims it's no big deal, they head inside, and Sumisu commends her on keeping her cool for once. Mia then says she is trying to be a lot more mature so little Papy won't run off, but then Sumisu tells her that Papy is the same age as her. In an instant, Nismature rips the door apart and takes over from Kurusu to warn Papy against trying anything funny while he gets his head split open by the broken door. Early the next morning, Kurusu finds them both still asleep and checks his fridge before heading to the grocery store to get more supplies. On the way back, he wonders if his bank balance can handle 2 monster baddies and suddenly gets slammed into a pole by a centaur. After Centauria introduces herself and asks if he is her soulmate, he calls Sumisu to ask about it, but she tells him to watch after her because she has the day off. Centauria then hands over his groceries and says they have to be soulmates because the Japanese corn she likes to watch always starts with the lovers bumping into each other. Kurusu immediately tells her to lower her expectations because he isn't into coarse chicks that consume such content. As he further explains the danger of charging into intersections like a lunatic, a lady gets her purse snatched, and Centauria shields Kurusu before seeing that he has found the special spot. After she pulls back, Kurusu says the same thief has been stealing purses all month, so she pulls her sword out and promises to stop him, but quickly remembers that she is banned from attacking humans. She then tells Kurusu to ride with her, so he tries to climb on and takes a hoof to the face before she tells him that only her chosen master can ride on her back. Moments later, the thief tries to count his loot, but then he sees Sentoshia catching up with Kurusu barely hanging on to her side. As he speeds up to escape, she continues chasing after him, but after cutting through some bottles of water, her melons become visible, so she tries to hide them while Kurusu gets an eyeful of plot. When the thief jumps onto a second road to escape, she follows behind him again, but Kurusu's hands start to slip, causing her to lose focus. After she promises to make him take responsibility for his actions, he unintentionally causes the thief to experience a sensory overload that sends him crashing into oncoming traffic before she also runs into a building. Upon realizing what Kuru did, she reaches for her sword to punish him, but the thief picks it up and tries to cut her down. Just then, Kurusu jumps in to save her and takes the hit, but he makes it out alive and explains to Sumisu later on that the sword was actually fake. After listening to the whole story, Sumisu tells him that it was stupid of him to ride her because centaurs only let their soulmates do that, which automatically means that she is now going to be the latest member of his harem. He immediately drops to his knees and begs for Centoria's forgiveness, but she leans in closer to say that he is the one for her before showing him how fast her heart is beating. Hours later, she starts setting ground rules with Mia and Papy, while Kurusu accepts that he might soon end up in the homeless shelter. The next day, Mia forces the girls out to the living room and explains the basics of having a host family before saying that she deserves more time with Kurusu because she is his first demi-human. Papy's pea-sized brain stops her from seeing through Mia's lies, so Centoria tells her to stop listening right before Kurusu walks in and tells Centoria to fill out her host application form. The fresh hoof mark on his face causes Mia to lose it, so he quickly explains how he surprised Centoria without knocking and got stumped as a result. After she apologizes for not locking the door, he tells her not to worry about it, but Mia pushes him away to continue arguing about Centoria's lack of control. As they both start fighting over who he loves the most, Papy's brain overheats from trying too hard to understand basic English, so he suggests taking a bath to cool off, and she asks if they can take it together. He then tries to ask one of the girls to do it instead, but upon seeing that they are still assaulting each other, he takes her into the bath and agrees to help her get changed since her feathers make it impossible to put on a swimsuit. After managing to get her covered without looking, he makes a mistake with the shirt and loses consciousness as a result. When she expresses how happy she is to finally have someone treat her like a brother, his anxiety reduces. As she further explains how there are only girls in her species, he decides to act like the brother she never had, but then she takes his hand closer to demonstrate the kind of relationship she is talking about. After he pulls away and tries to leave the bath, she tries to stop him and gets pinned to the wall by Centoria's arrows. She then tells him to get on her back so she can protect him, but Mia shows up and says she has to fill the form to be worthy of even talking to him. After she takes off running with Kurusu on her back, he grabs onto her jugs for safety and holds on until they get to a park. When she tells him to stop, he immediately apologizes, but she claims it's no big deal and proceeds to give a speech about how loyal centaurs have always been while he focuses on the recoil. He then tells her to stop being so uptight because the exchange program was specifically designed to give her a taste of normal human life, so she takes a look around and spots a couple holding hands. He easily notices and asks if she wants to do the same, but she gets too embarrassed to admit it, so he takes her hand. When he gets close to make sure she is okay with it, she turns away to hide how it makes her feel, but then Mia suddenly drops from the sky. After Papy apologizes for dropping her, Centoria demands to know why they ignored the rule forbidding demi-humans from going out without their humans, so Mia says it doesn't matter as long as they don't get caught. Just then, Mia sees Kurusu struggling for air and summons her alter ego before pulling him into her cold-blooded jugs and saying that she is the only one allowed to indulge in unholy activities with him. Papy then drags him into her vertical chest as well, and as they start fighting over him, Sumisu shows up and tries to use her tranquilizer gun, but ends up shooting Kurusu with all three. Hours later, he wakes up on the couch at home, and Sumisu immediately tells him to keep her murder attempt under wraps so she can keep her job. He then asks why the girls have not already surrounded him as usual before seeing them hiding by the door. After apologizing for always being the reason he ends up with a near-death experience, the girls promise to stop being so feisty around him, but he says they don't have to feel bad because their current situation can only be blamed on Sumisu's underdeveloped mind. He further explains that they should continue acting like themselves because they are basically a family now. Upon hearing this, Sumisu decides to tell him about a new exchange rule permitting humans to marry a demi-human before saying that he now has to marry one of the girls. After taking a moment to make sure he isn't still feeling the effect of the tranquilizer, he asks if she has completely lost it because there is no way he can just pick one of them and get married. Sumisu then responds by wishing him luck and thanking Centoria for filling the form before heading out. Hours later, Kurusu struggles to fall asleep as he continues thinking of what Sumisu said until Mia shows up to ask if he doesn't want to marry any of them. He then explains that he was more upset about the way Sumisu randomly decided to drop something so important on him, so she slowly makes her way in while asking if he wants to cuddle. After getting on top, she explains how snakes like to warm up with night-long cuddles. Just then, Papy crashes in and lands on his face, so he asks if she lost the little fragment of brain matter left in her head, but she promises she is okay and tries to get a workout in. Luckily, Centoria breaks the door down and saves him before explaining how the full moon affects demi-humans. After taking a look outside, he asks Centoria why it isn't affecting her, but she reminds him that they are already married before making sure he knows how much she loves him. When he pulls back, she decides to leave a lasting impression, But then Mia and Papy get back up and start losing control of their strength as they fight over who gets to play with him first. Kurusu quickly realizes that agreeing to their demands will mean a long stay in the ICU, so he escapes to the kitchen and calls Shimizu, who is currently soaking up in a bathtub. He immediately starts cussing her out for not telling him about the full moon, so she apologizes and tells him to find a way to cool him off for the night. Just as he tries to find some ice, they find him and attack, but after seeing what appears to be his insides leaking out, they pull back in fear that he might have already croaked. Thankfully, it is just a bottle of ketchup, so they decide to finish what they started. The next day, he wakes them up, and they all get shocked after seeing the bandages wrapped around him, but he tells them not to worry and blames himself for being indecisive before saying that he will date all three of them before choosing his wife. While Mia heads to her room to delude herself into thinking that she will become Kurusu's baby mama, Centaur cleans up her sword and vows to protect him forever. Moments later, he finishes up with dinner and tries to get Papy to stop obsessing over her game. Mia then comes out to see what he made, but she finds a slime in the pot and almost gets suffocated to death. They manage to save her, but she gets sick, so Kurusu prepares some warm water to get her fever under control. When he asks Centaur about the slime, she explains that their species is still not accepted by humans because of how difficult it is to understand them. She then swears to protect him with her life, but Papy starts begging him to play the game again, so Centaur starts yelling at her for not taking their current situation seriously. As Kurusu then tries to warm up the towel for Mia again, the slime reveals itself, and Centaur immediately attacks, but it stretches out to stop her sword before soaking them both. Upon seeing Centaur's jugs, Kurusu runs off to the bathroom for a quick gun sesh. The clarity helps him think of a solution to the slime problem, but then Centaur shows up at the door and asks if she can come in. He easily agrees to it, thinking she just wants to check on him, but after she goes commando, he asks if she needs to get psychiatric help. She then promises that she just wants to keep him safe and further explains that she stripped because she needs help washing the slime off her fur. While scrubbing the slime off, he tries to reach her cakes, but she tells him to stop because he is getting close to the sweet spot. After apologizing, he decides to clean somewhere else but ends up making another terrible mistake, so they just decide to get the bath over with. Kurusu then asks if she has any idea what the slime was, and she says it probably needs water since they have only seen it around a body of water. He then tries to joke about how funny it would be if they saw it in the bath, and suddenly notices something sticky dropping from the ceiling. After Centaur immediately reaches for her sword and almost crushes his own with her grip, she passes out, and he gets captured by the slime. As he tries to negotiate, it switches to a human form and forces him to the floor before covering him with slime. When he tries to stop her, she completely ignores his pleading, but then he realizes that she is copying everything she sees as a way of communicating with them. After desperately trying to get her off and failing miserably, he decides to make a risky gamble and jumps into the bath. Luckily, the excess water stops her from attacking him, so he finishes up and explains what happened to Centaur and Mia before they see that she made it out and has been playing with Papy. The next day, they both get pissed at her for getting their stuff covered in slime, but Papy tells them to stop being mean before deciding to name her Sue. When they ask why she would choose to name a copycat that literally has no brain cells, she explains that Sue is actually smart and probably hasn't dealt with other species before, which would explain why she can't communicate properly. After agreeing to spare her life, Centaur says she has to at least stop running around the house with her plot open, so Kurusu comes up with an idea and makes her put on a raincoat. While she continues playing with Sue, Centaur and Mia tell Kurusu that letting her stay might be dangerous because her kind is not included in the exchange program due to how unpredictable they can be. When they say she could even get arrested if they don't call Shimizu to ask for help, Papy runs out with her, and Kurusu immediately chases after them, while Mia and Centaur decide to stay back. Moments later, Sue sees the river underneath her and suddenly starts shaking aggressively, causing Papy to let go. After she breaks her fall with Kurusu's back, Papy puts her raincoat back on before he explains that the river might be dangerous for her kind because the excess water would dilute their bodies. Papy then apologizes to her but tells Kurusu to stay away and promises to run away with her if they try to call the cops. As he tries to explain, a bunch of young students show up and ask Papy to join their water gun battle like they already know her. After one of the girls tells Kurusu that they play together all the time, he realizes that Papy still sneaks out but wonders what could have made the dollar store hot girl so popular. That curiosity vanishes the moment he sees the boys getting slime all over themselves. Just then, Sue walks off to the edge of the river and sucks in some of the water before returning to her superior form and giving one of the boys a taste of heaven. As the others beg for a turn, she joins the girls to attack them, and they all run up to the road, so Kurusu follows and starts to rethink the conversation he had with Mia and Centauria. Just then, the loudmouth couple from before try to test out the whip they got with the settlement money, but after one of the girls enters the road, he starts swerving to avoid her, but still ends up crashing. Thankfully, Sue saves the girl by absorbing the impact, but then the wall breaks apart, and she ends up hanging on for dear life as Papy tries to save her. Unfortunately, her slippery body makes it impossible for Papy to pull her up, but before falling, Sue manages to say thank you. The next moment, she drops and Papy falls back to deal with the trauma. But then she hears Sue's voice, and they all see that Kurusu managed to get the truck under her. On the way home moments later, he calls Mia and Centauria to explain that Sue will be joining their family, but after saying they have to keep it a secret from Shimizu, they get back home and find her already waiting for him inside. The next day, Mia calls for a meeting to discuss ways to keep Sue hidden from the government, and when Kurusu asks why they are suddenly on her side, Mia states that she is still too stupid to fight over his glizzy. Just then, a team from the exchange program shows up and immediately starts breaking down the house before one of them explains that they are setting up a new room for one of his girls. While Kurusu starts to think that Shimizu might not be completely useless, the girls make it to a park and freak out when they realize that they didn't escape with him. The next moment, they crawl behind the bushes to hide from government agents, but after Papy gets soaked by the water Sue was meant to drink, the depraved slime decides to kiss until all the water is out. Papy tries to stop her, but that only makes her a lot more dedicated to the task. As Mia and Centauria realize the danger they are in, Kurusu starts searching for them, but suddenly hears someone screaming before seeing a chick in a wheelchair about to crash into a pole. After jumping in to save her and almost drowning in milk, he helps her with the wheelchair, and Mero introduces herself before properly thanking him. He then asks if she won't mind tagging along while he searches for the girls, but she says she actually saw them minutes ago at the park. By then, Centauria and Mia have already gotten their jugs soaked by Sue as they continue trying to get her under control to stay hidden from the men in black. Centauria then suggests finding a new hiding spot, and Mia clowns her for thinking she can continue hiding her insanely huge dump truck. As she turns to face her, she breaks the tap and ends up with a soaked gat, so Mia tries to help, but Sue immediately dives in to take all the water. Mia then holds Centauria's mouth shut, but Sue's slime ends up tickling her in all the right spots. When Kurusu finally gets to the park, he finds Mia about to fight for her life, but Sue manages to overpower her and delivers the same treatment she did with the girls. With all three of them knocked out, she tries to attack Mero, but Kurusu ties her up in a bag before taking them all back home. After the exchange guys hand over a couple of documents for the new pool and leave, the girls all get excited to see that Sue finally has a spot to live in. They then thank Shimizu for not being completely useless, but after saying that she actually doesn't want any part in how they choose to live with Sue, she brings in Mero, who then introduces herself as the latest moment of their harem. They all initially get confused because they thought she was just a legless vegetable, but then she rolls out her fishtail and says the pool belongs to her. As Kurusu then tries to carry her into the water, Mia sees his kind gesture as an attempt to fulfill his Little Mermaid fantasies and attacks him. After they both give him a face full of chest bags, Mia destroys Mero's wheelchair to stop Kurusu from having to push her around, but that only makes matters worse as he decides to carry her everywhere. Centauria then asks Maya why she is so triggered, and she explains that while all three of them are not a threat to her romantic life with Kurusu, Mero is definitely someone capable of stealing his heart away. Just then, Kurusu's grip slips, and he ends up grabbing a melon, causing Mia to get pissed again. He immediately tries to explain but yanks her plot cover right off, so Mero explains how her slimy body makes it hard for anything to stay on. As Kurusu picks her back up for a tour of the house, Mia decides to get her plots soaked in Sue's slime to get his attention, but he tells her to go wash off and continues showing Mero around. Instead of accepting defeat, Maya then decides to freeze her gills off and turns the temperature in her room all the way down. But after Mero explains that mermaids are also resistant to cold, she nearly enters the light as the cold clogs up her insides. After escaping death, Mia decides to get help from everyone else, but Papy easily betrays her to ask Mero if she wants to play a game together. When Mero starts asking if Kurusu has a girl, Centauria admits to feeling a little suspicious about her and asks why she is so interested in Kurusu's love life. She then tells him about the Little Mermaid story and explains how addicted she is to sad romance stories before asking Centauria if she is Kurusu's one true love. Upon seeing how embarrassed she gets about the question, Mero says she had always heard stories of how loyal and dedicated centaurs can be to their masters. Hearing that causes Centauria to fall for Mero's charms, but Mia snaps her out of it and promises to make sure Kurusu never falls for her. After Mero said she doesn't actually want that, he gets back with new batteries for the thermostat, but then Mero asks to be carried to the pool because the air is too dry for her gills. Moments later, Mia tries to think of another plan, but Centauria tells her to stop and accept that Mero is not as evil as she thinks. Mia then tells her that she has always dreamed of being carried around by Kurusu and wishes she could also walk around in a swimsuit before finally getting a new idea. After she joins them by the pool and reminds Kurusu of how good her jugs feel, they see Centauria hiding by the door, so Mia tells her to stop being shy. Centauria then walks in with her swimsuit, and that causes Mia to ask if she is also trying to steal him away from her. She denies it right before feeling something around her hooves and seeing Papy. After Papy asks if they have seen Sue, her feathers tickle Centauria, so she runs back inside to hide her horrible laughter. Just then, Mia sees Mero dragging Kurusu into the water with her and immediately dives in to save him. But after a few seconds, the water begins to fill up her lungs, and she ends up falling unconscious at the bottom of the pool. Thankfully, Kurusu pulls her back to the surface, and Mero suddenly gets extremely worried about her before Sue latches onto Kurusu's head. In a warm bath minutes later, Mia apologizes to Mero for being so rude, but she says she barely noticed anything. After Mia still promises to stop Kurusu from being with her, Mero says that she has no problem with that and explains that her addiction to the Little Mermaid's love story is because of how toxic it was. She then promises to help Mia steal his heart as long as she gets to be his bestie, and offers a massage while Centauria and the others realize that they just allowed another psycho to join the family. A couple days later, Mia decides to take her love for Kurusu a step further by working on her culinary skills, while he watches to make sure the house doesn't get burned down. After she drifts off to Lala land to imagine being married to him, he calls her back to reality to stop the overboiling pot, so she picks it up and almost burns her hand off. Hours later, he stands by the door and tries to cheer her up, but she keeps telling him to give her some time alone while wriggling around in the sheets. Just as he suddenly finds a piece of skin on the ground and tries to figure out what it is, she breaks down the door to stop him. He then sees that she is shedding and offers to help, but she crawls back into bed and explains how embarrassing it is to have him see her dead skin. In an attempt to make her feel better, he points out the fact that she is almost always without plot armor, but she still insists that her skin is more important than having dignity and starts to feel bad about being an incompetent sausage addict who can't seem to get anything right. When he says it could probably be because her body is still adjusting to the new environment, she asks how he seems to know so much about her kind, so he admits to doing some research as well as receiving some lessons from Sumizu. After a lot of persuading and promises to be gentle, Mia decides to let him peel off the old skin, but as he starts stripping it off, her new skin becomes extremely sensitive, so he starts fighting to stop his intrusive thoughts from taking over. When he gets to the tip of her tail, she immediately wraps him up and asks for a break because she might go nuts if he continues, but he fights back and manages to take it off. He then tells her to turn over so he can get the rest, and she rolls over before covering his eye and reminding him to be careful of her pink cat. He immediately pulls back and tells her to handle the rest on her own, but she reminds him that her burnt hands are making that impossible before covering up her kitty and offering to direct him. The next moment, he tries to find the skin with her direction and rubs up against the outer walls, which almost causes her to gush like a waterfall. After also fighting to keep his woodpecker under control, he decides to go all out and asks for directions again, but by the time she realizes that the snail is open, he tries to hold it and almost loses his head. Later that day, she then serves him a full-course meal straight from hell, and when he asks what the culinary abomination he is witnessing, she claims it's an amazing dish from her homeland and tells him to start eating. Despite almost seeing the light, he thanks her for the meal right before Centauria, and the others come out looking like they just got discharged from ICU and reveal that they also ate the food. The following evening, Kurusu gets back from a visit to the store, so the girls all welcome him and ask if he wants a reward for all his hard work. After Sue pounces, Centauria tells her to wait her turn, but then Papy suddenly reveals that she will be laying an egg soon. Moments later, the girls realize that it is a natural process and apologize to Kurusu for trying to unalive him. As they start asking Papy a bunch of questions about it, he suggests calling Sumisu first, but then they hear the doorbell and see a human smurf named Kaseti, who then introduces himself as a director and asks for permission to film them for his documentary on the exchange program. After they let him in and agree to the filming, Kasei decides to start with Papy, but after seeing that she isn't ready to drop the egg yet, he decides to go interview Mero instead. At her pool moments later, she explains everything about her way of life until Kasei starts asking to see plot. She ignores it and jumps out to show off her strength. But then her gills slip out, and Kasegi immediately gets a close-up before she runs back into the water. Kurusu and the girls then try to attack him, but he promises to edit it out and asks for Centoria's room next. Once inside, she tries to explain the cultural importance of keeping up the old Japanese customs, but he immediately starts asking for plot again. Without even giving him a chance to explain, she reaches for her sword and says she will never tolerate such disrespect. Kasegi then claims to be well prepared for any punishment she has planned, as long as he can do his job, before asking Mia for a tour of her room. Upon getting there, he asks the exact same question and almost becomes the first human to get poisoned by her, but then he sees the bag of her old skin and asks about it. After she grabs it and says she has been having second thoughts about throwing it away, Kasegi explains how important such a rare item could be to otakus, but she still refuses until he claims that giving it up could help her win the entire world's support to be Kurusu's bride. Just as she agrees to give it to him, Mero shows up to tell Kurusu that Papy is about to drop the egg, so they all run to her room and Kasegi follows to film every second. Kurusu tries to stop him, but he tells him to focus on Papy, so he sits behind her to offer support. After she asks for a massage, the middle-aged Smurf gets hyped to see the egg and suggests removing anything that obstructs the process to make Papy comfortable. As Kurusu foolishly listens to him and tries to take it off, Sue latches onto Kasegi's mind and reads out his plan to sell the documentary along with Papy's egg for a small fortune. As the girls immediately surround him to take the camera by force, he reminds them of the law forbidding demi-humans to attack regular people, so Kurusu offers to hand over Papy's egg and throws it to him. Just as Kasegi tries to reach it, Kurusu fractures his face with a nasty punch and tells the girls that it was actually a random egg from the ones he bought. After they all help Papy to finally lay the egg, Sumisu shows up to join them for dinner and promises to look into Kasegi because he might be a repeat offender. She then asks what they are having, and he tells her to get a doctor's number on standby just in case before asking Papy if it was a good idea to keep her egg in the refrigerator. Just as Mia reveals that she actually got the egg she is boiling from the refrigerator, Kasegi gets back home to gather threads and yells at a spider baddie named Rachnera for making fun of him for missing his chance to escape poverty. When he tries to threaten her, she decides to add him to the dinner menu and gets even more intrigued by Kurusu. Several days later, a group of orcs decide to take over a manga store and hold everyone inside hostage until the police force sets up a perimeter to figure out what they want. After their leader explains that they want all the manga series to be converted to the most diabolical corn novels with their hideous faces on every poster, the police chief's assistant breaks it down in a way his middle-aged mind can understand. As she further explains that the interspecies exchange bill stops them from being able to use force, the chief loses it and tells Minister Blubberbrains that they have to save the hostages at all cost, but the minister tells him to go ahead if he is okay with sleeping in solitary confinement for the rest of his life. Just then, Sumisu shows up and tries to pose as the cool, mysterious hero they all need, but ends up burning her throat with hot coffee. Moments later, the orcs continue feasting their eyes on every otaku magazine they can find, but then the boss suddenly picks up a scent and starts shooting into the ceiling until a chick named Zombina falls out. After explaining that they can smell Kitty from over a mile away, he calls the chief to make them listen as he pumps bullets into her. Seeing as they have no other option, the chief tells Sumisu to take matters into her own hands, but she tells him not to worry because her plans have already started. Just then, another orc finds a famous idol chick, and they all get excited to play with her cakes. But after seeing the wannabe ninja with holes all over her chest, the idol gets terrified and pulls down the blinds to beg for help. The boss then tells her not to worry and demonstrates how serious they are to the police force. Just then, a sniper chick named Monako gets her gun into position and proceeds to shatter all their guns, despite being several miles away. As they all start to panic, the wall gets destroyed by a budget-friendly juggernaut who turns out to be a monster baddie named Tionisia. After she frees all the hostages, the boss tells his goons not to worry since they still have the idol, so they try to find more guns, but then Zombina suddenly gets back up and starts shooting. One of them immediately begins strangling her and promises to rip her corpse to shreds, but she tells him not to get his hopes up before shooting right through her insides to reach him. Luckily, the rubber bullets fail to penetrate his thick skin, but he still gets shocked by how psychotic she is, so she pops out her melons before explaining that she is basically a Gen Z Frankenstein. As she turns to take down the boss, he threatens to rip out the idol's spine, but after a brutal kick to the snout, Doppel returns to her perfect chocolate bod and calls him stupid for thinking a famous idol could just walk into a corn store. After Shimizu enters the store to demand for his surrender, he easily admits defeat and reminds her that they can only deport him according to the exchange program's laws, but Shimizu decides to punish him on the spot, so Doppel copies her form to confuse him. Later on, Shimizu goes over to Kurusu's place for tea, but a news story comes up about the arrest of the orcs, and they all get shocked upon seeing her on the screen. She then tells Kurusu to prepare a huge dinner before her squad of monster baddies show up to eat. Hours later, director Turdface manages to send an SOS message through Rachnera's webs, so the girls head over to check it out. But while they deal with the web traps she set up all over the place, she makes it to the roof and dodges Monaco's bullet before escaping. Shimizu then explains to Mia and the others that she might be targeting Kurusu and asks when he will be back from shopping, before they see Papy and Sue bringing in groceries. When they ask about it, Papy explains that they were just lying at the entrance, so they run out and realize that Rachnera has already kidnapped him. Moments later, Kurusu wakes up suspended in a warehouse, and Rachnera immediately starts blabbing about how his lack of nuts caused him to pass out when she first grabbed him. When he ignores the clowning and asks to be let down, she drops in to see how long he can keep up the tough guy act, but upon seeing that her jugs are about to pop out, he takes off running to avoid losing control. As she starts to think he is actually just scared of her, they hear a voice, so she takes him up to the roof to hide but notices that he's excited, so she squeezes even harder to torture him until the guards leave. She then leaves him suspended by a thread around his mouth and continues the torment, but he gets fed up and bites down on the thread. After getting saved, he asks why she isn't with her host family, so she explains how they got scared when she first arrived and illegally traded her to the creepy director. When he tries to express some sympathy, she pins him down and says she doesn't want anything from humans because they are all a bunch of depraved lunatics who would only like to fulfill their fantasies with her human parts. Kurusu then says that he actually likes her spider legs, and she immediately starts asking for the last time he got some before laughing at him for being so down bad. The next moment, the entire warehouse gets surrounded by the exchange program SWAT team, and Shimizu promises to take her in without violence if she surrenders. But while she starts to think Kurusu found a way to call them, he becomes convinced that they want to arrest him for attacking the director. When he gets up to surrender and wishes her luck, she starts laughing at how stupid he is again, and the entire SWAT unit hears it, so they leave and Shimizu goes inside to apologize for getting her set up with the wrong family. After saying that her incompetence and caveman IQ didn't come as a surprise, Rachnera says she won't need to find another host family because she has decided to move into Kurusu's place. The next morning, he tries to turn off the alarm, but accidentally discovers Centauria, so he immediately pulls back to ask why she is suddenly acting like Mia. After breakfast minutes later, the girls all compliment his cooking, but when Rachnera calls him darling, Mia tells her to remember her place in the harem's hierarchy. When she completely ignores her to continue praising Kurusu, Mia tries to attack but gets wrapped up in an instant. She then tries to get help from Papy and sees that Rachnera has already deceived the dust-brained dimwit along with Sue. After Mero also falls for her charms, Mia remembers that Centauria cannot be easily deceived and feels confident, but Centauria tells her to stop being so hostile because she hasn't noticed anything suspicious about Rachnera. When Kurusu finally finishes up with the dishes, Centauria nearly crushes his head up against the wall and offers to let him ride on her back, but he declines and asks why she is suddenly being so assertive. She then reminds him of her promise to be by his side at all times, but when he asks if that includes his bath time, she apologizes for being inconsiderate. After he enters the bath, Mia continues insisting that Rachnera has ulterior motives, but Centauria tells her to stop assuming that every lunatic they let in actually wants Kurusu. Just then, they hear him scream and break down the door as Rachnera tries him up for her bondage ritual. After she promises that he was the one who barged inside while she was cleaning up, Maya tries to attack again, but Centauria holds her back and tells Rachnera to lock the door next time. Hours later, Kurusu tries to finally get some rest, but then he falls into Rachnera's webs and she reveals herself to see how he reacts. Just as she tries to get busy, Centauria cuts down the door and drags him out through the window to escape. While racing through the busy city street, the constant stairs begin to increase her anxiety, so Kurusu tries to explain that they are all just struggling to understand how parts of her can defy gravity. When she eventually stops and admits that she overreacted, the same turd-faced couple from before show up to clown him for thinking too much of himself. She initially stops him from stepping up, but as they continue the insults, she also gets pissed, The husband reminds her of the interspecies law. After one of them grabs Kurusu, the others grab her arms so he can feel up her watermelons, but they all suddenly get wrapped up by Rachnera. Upon seeing her up close, they all get heart attacks, so Centaur tries to give a thank you speech, but Rachnera completely ignores her to continue what she started with Kurusu. Centaur then plants her face into the concrete and grabs Kurusu before admitting to hating Rachnera and telling her to stay away from him. By the time she realizes that Kurusu has lost consciousness from her insane grip strength, Rachnera starts laughing and commends her for finally speaking her mind. She further tells Centaur that she doesn't have to get along with every demi-human just to prove a point and says it's okay if she doesn't really like her. On the way home, Centaur then asks Rachnera for a way to pay her back for saving them and regrets it when Rachnera uses her to finally complete her bondage fantasy bucket list. Several days later, the girls find Kurusu struggling with a fever in bed, and Mia quickly switches into a nurse outfit to treat him with her chest. Just then, Shimizu crashes in and tells them to stay away from him before a bunch of scientists seal off his room. She then explains that he might have contracted a virus capable of creating a redo of COVID and says she has to be the one looking for him. After realizing that she cooked up the whole story to avoid all the extra work at the office, the girls find her sleeping and decide to be the ones taking care of him, no matter the cost. When Centaur points out the fact that his sickness might actually be harmful to them, Mero said she wouldn't mind losing her life as long as she takes her last breath in his arms. After agreeing that Sue is in the best position to nurse him back to health, they remember that she literally doesn't have a brain, but then Mero suggests teaching her to copy them so she can treat him the exact same way they would. Centaur then decides to be the first, so Sue takes on Kurusu's form and listens as she demonstrates how to check his temperature until the love hormones cause her brain to get overheated. Moments later, Kurusu hears Centaur's voice, but after seeing Sue, he gets confused until she explains the plan and makes him sit up for the temperature check. Sue almost suffocates him in the process, so Mero takes over and makes him sit in a bath until the cold starts to make his sickness even worse. When it gets to Mia's turn, she prepares a special white porridge, and the girls initially think she has finally stopped creating poison. So Mero decides to take a spoon and experiences multiple deaths in a matter of seconds. Sue then takes it to Kurusu, and he already expects it to be the same poison, but after opening it up and seeing that she has already eaten it, he thanks her for the save. The next moment, Papy takes over and tells Sue to cuddle him like she would with her feathers, but when she tries to replicate Papy's wings, Kurusu loses bladder control as her new form nearly gives him a heart attack. To redeem herself, Papy starts teaching Sue an advanced cuddle technique, but Mia gets jealous and pulls her away to try a more better technique. After Centaur tries to follow her lead and short-circuits her brain again, Rachnera ties them all up and says Sue might get the wrong message if they don't stop. As they realize that she has already gone back to his room, she unlocks her latest form, but he passes out from exhaustion. She then decides to go through his memories and sees that he caught the cold after finding her in the rain the other day and giving her his umbrella. Hours later, he wakes up and sees that she has been feeding him water straight from the source and pulls away before realizing that the fever is gone. After everyone else comes in to check on him, he tells them to stop underestimating Sue, but then she admits to being the cause of the illness and says she is happy that her love fixed it. When the shock wears off, Maya starts threatening to toss her into a river if she even thinks of stealing his heart. Just then, Shimizu finally wakes up and asks what happened, but after a sudden sneeze, they all run off and leave her to the mercy of her girl squad. Days later, Kurusu goes to a maid cafe to see Shimizu and asks why they couldn't just go to a regular restaurant. While she explains her addiction to cringy diners, a customer walks in and gets seated before seeing Mia and the others spying on Kurusu to figure out why he would be on a date with Shimizu. Mia then suggests sneaking in, but Centaur reminds her that they don't exactly blend in with regular people, so they come up with an idea to use Sue's abilities. Just as Shimizu starts complaining about the weird-tasting coffee, someone appears in front of them, and Kurusu immediately thinks it's Mero until he takes a good look at her face. After taking their order, she hops away and calls the girls to say their plan to use Sue as an outfit is going smoothly. As she then tries to listen to the conversation between Kurusu and Shimizu, her tail slips, and she ends up getting coffee spilled on her face, causing the customer to completely lose his senses. After taking a moment to indulge in her toxic fantasies about Kurusu, she hears Shimizu asking if he wants to take their date to a new spot and tries to tell the others, but her sweat causes Sue to lose control. Mero then falls back and tries to calm her, but Sue's thirst only increases, and Mero ends up losing control right before Shimizu and Kurusu head out. At an arcade minutes later, they see a bunch of cosplayers outside and guess that it's some sort of convention, but then Kurusu spots Papy's wings. After taking a better look at her, he becomes convinced that it's someone else and heads inside while Mia and Centaur watch from the corner and wait to get Papy's call. Shortly after that, Papy hears Sumisu telling Kurusu to follow her to a private spot and tries to make the call, but the phone falls into Sue, so she starts trying to squeeze it out of her chest bags. As a crowd gathers to watch her, the phone slips further down, so she reaches into her box to grab it and Maya tries to call her again. Just then, the lovebirds leave again and find a spot to sit outside before Sumisu asks for some ice cream. Upon getting to the ice cream truck, Kurusu sees two very similar pairs of jugs, but fails to see through Mia and Centaur's disguise, so they serve him and thank God that the truck was completely free when they found it. Due to Sue having to stretch herself for both of their costumes, the shirts get even tighter, and that causes a sudden surge of shameless creeps posing as customers. At that same moment, Sumisu decides to take their date to a hotel, so Mia immediately chases after them, causing Sue to lose her grip and expose Centaur. When Mia finally gets close enough with a box, Rachnera blows her cover and says she can drop the spy charade before using her webs to locate the room Kurusu booked. Mia then asks why she is interested in the date as well, so she explains how getting photos of them together will give her enough leverage to dominate their harem. As she turns to reach the window, Mia jumps on her back and starts trying to pull her down while saying that Kurusu definitely has a reason for his actions. The next moment, they both get pulled into the room and almost take a bullet to the head before seeing Sumisu's low-budget Powerpuff Girls. Back at the park moments later, she shows them all a death threat sent to Kurusu from an anonymous hater and explains that the date was an attempt to lure them out before asking if they could all go on dates with him instead, since the attacker clearly doesn't care about her. The next day, Mia's excitement to be with him quickly fades after she remembers that Mero is also tagging along for their date. After she scares off all the tourists, Mero reminds her that she only wants to be a mistress and promises to support her until they both get married. While Mia regains her excitement, Kurusu wonders how Tia will keep up as a crowd builds up to see her. At the aquarium moments later, Mero receives a royal welcome by the workers, and that causes Kurusu to wonder if she is secretly married to Aquaman. Once inside, she hands him a special pass to all the attractions before running off to reconnect with her nature buddies. Kurusu and Mia then go on to spend most of the day trying out a bunch of activities before stopping by a fish tank to share a special moment together. As they both lean in for a steamy kiss, Mero interrupts to give them a crash course on aquatic life and almost gets strangled to death by Mia. As an apology for ruining your moment, she then takes them to the dolphin show and tells Mia to create another steamy situation before putting on a show with the dolphins. While Mero continues dancing, Mia starts to notice how captivated Kurusu is, and by the time their performance finishes, he sees that she has already left. After taking the escalator down, she bumps into a lizard man who immediately apologizes and starts complaining about how cold the aquarium is. Mia quickly relates to him, so he hands her a can of hot coffee for warmth before walking off with her to find somewhere a little less cold. Meanwhile, Tia gets occupied with a dolphin, and by the time Sumisu tells her that the girls could also be in danger, Mia gets into a boat with Draco. As he continues talking bad about Kurusu and how he is stupid to be paying more attention to someone else, Mia tries to defend him and says he was only being nice, but Draco suddenly gets pissed and reveals that he alone is worthy of her cold-blooded heart. After he promises to end Kurusu if she refuses to accept that they are a perfect match, she tells him that lizard men are not meant to date her kind. Draco then spreads out his wings to show that he is a dragonoot and ties her hands to finally get a good look at what makes Kurusu go nuts. Just then, they see Kurusu charging straight for them, so Draco tries to steer it away and sees Mero running off with the paddles. After the crash, Kurusu helps Mia get back to land and hands over his jacket to keep her warm, but when Draco shows up again to claim her heart, she throws the hot coffee in his face. Upon seeing that the water is starting to affect him, Kurusu walks over to help, but after taking off the shirt, they realize that Draco is actually a chick. She then claims to have just been looking for a friend and promises to get her revenge on Kurusu before taking off. Moments later, she gets captured by Tia, and Sumisu checks to see if she is the one who sent the death threat before warning her against sneaking out without her host family. Several days later, Kurusu tries to enjoy a barbecue he set up, but the fact that Papy made him do it by a dumpster gets him upset, so he asks why they couldn't just do it at a park like normal people. As she tries to remember why she chose that spot, Zombina starts tearing through all the meat, so he reminds her to focus on her bodyguard mission. After she tells him about some illegally dumped industrial waste, they suddenly get attacked by Groot's uncle, so Kurusu takes off running with the girls. As Papy takes a good look at it and remembers why she chose that spot, it captures her and trips Kurusu, so he tells Sue to run back home before also getting caught. After she gets smacked into the industrial waste Zombina was talking about, a plot-heavy dryad named Ki reveals herself and swears to get revenge on all of humanity. Kurusu then pulls out his demi-human guidebook to figure out what she is, but she increases her grip to crush his ribs until Papy calls out her name. When Kurusu asks how she knows her, Papy tells him about the day Sumisu caught a demi-human kidnapper that was planning to sell her off. After planting Ki into the forest, she promised to constantly check up on her and flew off but completely forgot that she even existed. Papy then tries to tell Ki that Kurusu is a good guy, but after she still vows to end him, Papy starts to think she might be the one who sent the death threat and tries to attack. The next moment she gets smacked away and lands in Sue's colossal jugs before she puts on a budget-friendly adaptation of Godzilla to stop Ki. After dropping Kurusu on one of her melons, Sue explains that she probably also got exposed to the waste and says their only hope is to extract it from her body. As they continue fighting, Papy and Kurusu struggle to hang on, but after falling off Sue's body and landing right on Ki, Papy comes up with a brilliant idea and proceeds to drain out the waste from Ki. As Sue starts to overpower her, she wraps up Papy's plot and latches onto Sue's jugs to get some of her juices. To keep her from getting stronger, Kurusu then takes over from Papy and empties her jugs until they all crash into Zombina. Minutes later, Sumisu shows up to scold Ki, but Kurusu reminds her that it was the illegal waste that caused everything. She then tells him to relax because Ki won't get deported as long as she starts a peaceful life in the forest. The following day, Centauria finally gets her turn to go on a date with Kurusu, but after she screams at a couple of civilians, Monako calls to tell her that looking like a medieval knight won't make their target reveal himself. This causes Centauria to get pissed until Kurusu tells her to at least take off the helmet. After she agrees but promises to continue protecting him, they continue with the date just as a girl shows up beside Monako. She quickly tries to cover up her eye, but the wind blows it back open, and the girl immediately runs away, causing Monako to feel sad. Lilith then hides by the door to laugh at her and decides to make Centauria the target of her next prank. Meanwhile, she has just found a way to literally make herself the butt of the joke and completely destroys a stand before smashing into Kurusu with her dump truck. At the park later on, they get set up for a picnic, and Kurusu gets surprised when he sees the box of sandwiches she made. After she explains how she spent days learning how to cook to save him from Mia, he takes a bite and struggles to hide the fact that it tastes like concrete. When she asks if he likes it, Rachnera grabs one and asks if she even tried it before making so many. Upon seeing the look on his face and realizing that all her effort was pointless, she explains that being a vegetarian makes it hard to taste anything else and leaves to get her emotions under control. When Lilith finds her and asks why she is sulking, she explains how useless she has always been to Kurusu, so Lilith offers to help and proceeds to hypnotize her. Moments later, Kurusu starts searching for her, but after coming back out, she pounces on him. In an attempt to push her back, he ends up in the wrong place and begins to lose his senses. Lilith then finds a spot to watch from and prays they take it to the next step before seeing an angry boar right behind her. The next moment, she starts running for her dear life, and the noise causes Centauria's hypnosis to wear off, so she tries to cover up while Kurusu uses his shirt to distract the boar. When it decides to charge at him instead, Centauria knocks it out cold, and Kurusu immediately starts glazing, but she gets emotional and apologizes for only being good enough to be a bodyguard. Just then, he jumps on her back and begs her to take him back home because all the running made him sprain his ankle. She then says he doesn't have to try so hard to make her feel better, but he grabs her from behind and tells her to stop underestimating how amazing she truly is. As they start heading home, Lilith tries to run her mouth to Rachnera, who then gets pissed and promises to spend all night punishing her. Hours later, Centauria prepares a huge serving of salads for the girls and decides to start helping out with that part of making dinner before forcing them to eat it all. Meanwhile, Rachnera has just finished making sure Lilith isn't the one who sent the letter, but the little devil continues asking for another punishment. The next day, Kurusu gets dragged across town like a rag doll by Tionishia as she gets overexcited to visit all the stores for their date. Earlier on, they had called him out to say he had to go on a date with all of them before handing over a second letter from the anonymous stalker named D. When he asked why Sumizu didn't tell him anything about it like she usually would, they further explained that it was actually their idea because they had all gotten tired of trying to protect him while dealing with the cultured lunatics in his team. Upon seeing that Mia and the girls had followed him again, Zombina lost her mind, but then he noticed that Doppel wasn't with them and asked why, before Monako told him that she just didn't want to show up. At a store minutes later, Tionishia tries on an outfit and asks for his opinion. but her beauty confuses him and the awkward response causes her to get upset. While trying to change for a second outfit, it gets stuck on her cake, so she asks for his help, but he ends up doing a lot more than help. Thankfully, the only thing she gets upset about is the skirt not being her size, so he offers to help fix it up with a toolkit later on. After she runs back into the dresser to finish getting changed, Zombina calls to ask for her turn because there is no way the stalker will attack with a giant horned girl pulling him around like an inflatable. On the way to see a zombie movie moments later, she starts yapping about how exciting it will be until her hand suddenly drops. While he easily stitches it back in the movie booth moments later, she gets surprised by his tolerance for blood, so he says he doesn't actually have a problem with her undead nature because they already know each other. Hearing that causes her heart to skip a few beats, but she decides to tease him a bit further just to see how much he can actually handle. The next moment, asks if he can sew her chest back in place, but after almost having a heart attack, he gets to work and asks if she feels any pain. When she claims to not be able to feel a thing, he tries to get a better view, but the noises almost rupture his eardrums, so he apologizes. After she claims to have just been messing around, Monako calls for her turn, so he leaves to take her out but notices that she keeps increasing the distance between them and asks if she can come closer. She then proceeds to slam her head into every pole in the area and eventually asks if they can just head to somewhere a little private. When they eventually get to a bench, he gets her a soda, and she starts to see why he is so popular with the ladies but still convinces herself that he is secretly scared of her. After thinking about how other guys usually avoid eye contact with her, she tells him to look her in the eye, but the warm look on his face leaves her too stunned to speak. He then gets closer to ask if she is okay, but then she sees someone spying on them and tells the stalker to freeze. As Zombina immediately starts firing, Tionishia throws the entire vending machine before Monako uses a tranquilizer dart to stop her. After seeing that the stalker is actually Doppel, they ask why she wrote the death threat on the way home, and she explains that it was the only way to help Kurusu make a decision about the girl sooner. Upon noticing that Zombina is still upset, she asks if they didn't have any fun on the dates with him, but then they start to remember how he made them feel and accept that it wasn't all bad. Meanwhile, Kurusu has just gotten to the bus stop, but then he sees a mysterious chick across the road right before a scythe gets placed on his neck. Several minutes later, he returns with a headless body, and Mia nearly goes number 2 while standing, so he explains that her head apparently went missing and her body seemed to be begging for his help. Mia immediately tries to pull him away, but after falling on the body, she loses consciousness, so they set her down on the couch before Kurusu decides to go find the head. After they all decide to help him, Mia wakes up from her trauma to join them, while Rachnera offers to stay home with Sue and the body. At a park minutes later, he and Centauria hear Mia screaming about something, so he takes a look and sees that it's just a mannequin. When he tells her to stop acting like a newborn, she runs to his back and starts begging to go back home. As she continues coming up with reasons why searching for a random head at night might be a fatal mission, Centauria tells Kurusu that she could be onto something because there is no way they will be able to explain searching for a head if the cops show up. Just then, they see Mia about to give up the ghost and take a closer look before seeing the lost head. While Centauria decides to check on Mia, Kurusu walks over to pick the head up, but Lala threatens to chop his hand off for thinking he can touch her so casually. He immediately apologizes and tries to leave, but she starts explaining how powerful she is and offers to share her blessings with him if he reattached her head. Upon seeing that he is still hesitating to help, she stops the overpowered villain facade and begs, so he picks her up. Just as he turns to head home, she starts making happy noises and tells him that someone is currently manhandling her body. At the time, Rachnera has just finished tying her up and almost stops herself, but her inner demons take over, so she proceeds to assault her plot, while Kurusu holds her mouth shut to hide from the cop. At one point, she suddenly stops, and Kurusu thinks the worst is over, but Sue takes over from Rachnera. Just then, the cop finally catches them and almost blows Kurusu's head off, but Papy knocks him out. Back at home moments later, Lala reattached her head but almost immediately takes it off again to eat everything in plain sight. After Rachnera explains that her kind are actually substitutes for the Grim Reaper, Kurusu asks why she hasn't left, so she reveals that she is actually the stalker planning to end him. As they all suspect that she might actually be insane, she explains that Kurusu's death has already been sealed in the Grim Reaper's journal and summons her scythe to make it quick. But Rachnera immediately places her in an odd position and tells Papy to get him to safety. While flying through the block, she loses focus until they crash into a billboard. Thankfully, Sue catches him, and Mia tries to catch her breath, but he sinks into her juices. So Centauria races to save him before they all realize that what Lala said might actually be true. When he tells them to stop acting like delusional nut jobs, Centaur offers to help him escape on her back and drags him away without even trying to listen to another word he says. After jumping over the crazy couple's car and causing an explosion, she gets lost in a series of fantasies about starting a new life with him until she realizes that his scalp has been peeling off on the road. She immediately stops and wonders how she could be so careless before Lala shows up and tells her to accept that his time is up. As Centaur prepares herself for a fight, Mero drags Kurusu into the water to escape and almost drowns him in the process. After taking him to the edge, she asks if he can leave her something special to remember just in case Lala is actually telling the truth. He then asks if she is talking about something valuable to him, but she straight up asks to become his baby mama and drags him to the bottom of the river so no one can interrupt them. While she prepares her fish lips for his magnum, he starts losing consciousness, but then Mia chokes Mero out and pulls him back to shore before squeezing the water out of his body. As she frantically tries to figure out a new escape plan, Rachnera ambushes her and says their best bet will be to make his death quick and painless instead of making him suffer until his inevitable end. After Mia refuses to accept it and says she would rather die with him, he asks why they are acting like their brains didn't make it out of the womb. He tries to explain that there is no way Lala is some sort of Grim Reaper substitute, but knows they are too stupid to believe him, so he decides to walk into the road as Truck Kun approaches with full speed. Mia immediately starts begging him to stop, but he refuses and promises that he will be fine before walking into the road and seeing that Truck Kun is actually just a toy. With Lala's claim of being the messenger of death finally exposed, they head back home where Samisu then yanks off her head and explains that she is actually just another runaway. When Mia asks why she chose to torment Kurusu with the threats, she tries to give another speech about death, but Samisu threatens to take her head away permanently, so she admits to being jealous that he got to live such an amazing life with the girls while she was a repeat outcast. Samisu immediately reminds her that her addiction to uniliving host families is why she is unwanted and says it might be time to deport her, but she runs over to Kurusu and asks if she can move in with him instead. After Samisu expresses her support, the girls also say they have no problem with it since she doesn't seem to be addicted to his magnum. The next day, Kurusu looks through everything he has spent in the last few months and realizes that he can barely afford a kid's meal. He then sees Mia practicing her culinary skills on Lala and checks the fridge before finding out that she used everything they had left to create another batch of poison. Minutes later, he takes Centaur and Mero shopping and loses hope when they see that the cheapest store in the neighborhood just closed down. Afterwards, Papy and Sue join them to visit the shopping district, but upon seeing them, every store owner starts trying to pack up in fear that the girls might eat everything they have. After Kurusu tells them that they eat like everyone else, Mero goes over to the fish seller and commends him on keeping all the fish fresh and well marbled. The next moment, her beauty erases every trace of common sense he has left, so he offers up the most expensive fish he has as a gift to her. After thanking him for the fish, Kurusu sees that Sue and Papy are occupied, so he tries to find Centaur, and they both end up watching as she tastes a vegetable seller's carrot and disconnects from reality. When her mind finally settles from the sugar rush, the seller also decides to give her a whole crate of stuff for free, and almost every other shop owner follows the initiative and thanks the girls for stopping by. Moments later, Kurusu tells them to head back without him and tells Sue that he still wants to get more stuff before they go home. After she reminds him that she doesn't actually need food like the others, he promises to continue feeding her even if he has to starve. She then drags him into the forest to ask Ki for permission to get some fruits and vegetables. Ki immediately reminds him of her dedication to protecting Mother Nature, but as she tries to say no, Sue grabs her and makes her so happy she can't move. After they give her a moment to process everything, she leads them to the best spot for finding food. But when Kurusu asks if she knows which ones are poisonous, she tells him to figure it out by himself. Just then, Sue starts tasting everything and reveals her ability to tell which ones are good enough to be eaten. Hours later, they start heading back, but just as Kurusu tries to start a conversation, Draco hears his voice and attacks. The next moment, Sue blasts her with all the poison she ate until her body freezes and her brain hits the snooze button. Several minutes later, Kurusu serves the girls an entire buffet and gets excited to watch them eat. But things take a turn when Samisu shows up with her girl squad to also get dinner. After another couple of hours of making their favorite dishes, he gets heartbroken upon seeing that they are completely out of groceries again. But when Sue tells Samizu, she asks why he didn't say anything because the exchange agency actually pays hosts back whatever they spend on the demi-humans living with them. Since he no longer has to worry about his credit score getting affected by the girls, will Kurusu continue adding baddies to his harem and finally get one to take his V card? That's it for this video. If you liked it and want the second part, drop a comment and subscribe to the channel for similar content. And as always, thanks for watching.